What's up, guys? Lucky Locks here. Welcome back to another prediction video. This is going to be for LFA 137, Gibson versus Amil. This looks like a pretty good card. This should be a fun one, and I'm excited to start talking about it. So without further ado, let's get into the first fight on the main card. First up, we got Pauline Macias versus Amber Brown at strawweight, and Macias is an Elevation Fight Team representative. I believe she is a black belt in judo. So far in her pro career, she has a record of 4-2, and she's currently coming in here on a 2-fight losing streak. So not great momentum coming into this one, but those losses were to very reputable names. Marnik Mann on LFA, she's looking like a very good strawweight prospect, and also Gloria DePaula, and that came on Contender Series. So Macias was doing enough to be on that radar for Dana White's Contender Series, and also has experience against a current UFC fighter in Gloria DePaula. So I think those are both positives as it pertains to this matchup. I don't think that Brown is on the level of either of those fighters, and Macias having that experience I do think is beneficial. On the Brown side, she actually is slightly younger by about a year than Pauline Macias, and she is a veteran. She has more than double the fights that Macias has. She has 9 fights on Invicta against pretty solid competition, but the problem is that she's 1-6 in her last 7, coming in off a layoff. Actually, she is younger. That is very surprising to Macias, but she has a lot more experience, and she's lost 3 times by decision, lost 3 times by sub. And I just think that Macias is the more talented prospect here, training at an excellent camp. I mean, I know her momentum hasn't been great, but the momentum of Brown so far has been even worse. 1-6 in her last 7. That's not really a great look. I think that Macias is going to break out of the slump here and get the win in this one. So that's going to be my lean in this first fight. Next up, we have a middleweight matchup between Billy Elekana, who is a 4-0 pro so far, and Daniel Compton. So Elekana is showing up on LFA for the 3rd time, and this is the 3rd time in a row that he's been booked to fight on LFA, and he won his last fight pretty impressively. He got it done in the first round. As a pro, he's looked very good, has not lost yet, also was very successful on the amateur circuit. He was 6-1-1 as an amateur, and Elekana is a guy who's built very solidly, very good hardware. He's a good striker as well, very powerful, and he's very, very explosive in the first round. He has slowed down a little bit sometimes into the later rounds, but still looks pretty good, still able to put on a good performance. When you see him in there, he's coming up against Daniel Compton here, and Daniel Compton is a little bit older, but he has looked pretty solid himself. He is 6-2 as a pro, and he's really developed himself over the years, really starting to come into his own now. He was 4-3 on the amateur circuit, and then started off his pro career with a 3-2 record, and now he's won 3 straight fights. He's finished every single one of those fights, and he's looked pretty good. Now, granted, it hasn't been a really tremendous level of competition, so I can't really be too confident in Compton's chances here. I do like Elekana. He is a big favorite, and I feel like that's probably somewhat deserved. I mean, I can see him being a big favorite, but I'm not really lining up to bet him at -600 or -650 or whatever it is that he's at now, but I do think he deserves to be the favorite, and a decent-sized favorite. So I like Billy Elekana here. I'm not really interested in this fight betting-wise, but I do think that he gets the win here and improves to 5-0. Next up, we're moving on to the featherweight division. We have Leandro Gomes coming up against Javier Garcia. Leandro Gomes is fighting at a King's MMA. He's appearing on LFA now for the 5th straight time, and he's 3-1 on LFA so far in the 4 fights that he has already fought in here. He has wins over Yuma Horiyuchi and Jacob Thrall. Those are nice wins. Gomes is up at 145 here. The fight against Horiyuchi was at 135, and Horiyuchi is a natural 125 pounder, so it was a close fight, so maybe Yuma wasn't really at his full power in that one, but nevertheless, it's a good win for Gomes. Gomes is a very good grappler, very good jiu-jitsu. He's a decent striker, but the one kind of big issue that I have with him is I find that he moves backwards a lot, and a lot of times if you watch his fights, when they are playing out on the feet, he's on the back foot for the majority of the time, and he is able to land, pretty well from the outside. I mean, he's got decent counter striking, and he throws hard, but the optics just aren't great for the judges when he's the one getting pressured, he's the one backing up to the cage, and that also doesn't really help him implement his grappling because it's a little bit trickier to get in those shots when you're constantly moving backwards. So we've also seen him slow down a little bit in his fights. I mean, this is not the first time he's been at 145 pounds, but he has been at 135 a lot, so it'd be interesting to see what he looks like here. I do think he's going to fill fill out the frame pretty well. And maybe potentially less of a weight cut is going to help him look a little bit fresher later into the fight. But I do think he's going to be the smaller guy here. He's coming up against Javier Garcia, who's appearing on LFA for the 6th time. He is definitely a regular on the show. He's 3-2 on LFA, but those losses came to pretty high-level guys in Bruno Souza, who's now in the UFC, and then Chase Gibson, who's in the main event of this one. And I think is kind of making a run for the LFA featherweight title. I think the winner of tonight's main event is definitely going to be in line for a shot somewhere down the line. So back to this fight, Garcia has great wins over Tim Tevez and AJ Cunningham. I think he is kind of the more natural 145 pounder, although I think both will. I think both are going to look fine. Garcia is a slick grappler. Although he did lose his last fight, he did have some big moments there. Almost got a rear naked choke in the first round and was able to have a little bit of success in the second round as well. But he's looked sharp in the striking over the course of his career. He's got good boxing combos. I like this guy. He's a good striker. He's a good grappler. He's just a well-rounded guy, and he's always going to fight for your money, which is good. So I got to lean to the underdog in Garcia here. I'm just not really sure how Gomes is going to cover minus 280 price tag besides getting a submission win. I think that there's going to be some wild striking exchanges here. I think there's going to be some crazy scrambles going on in this match, and at the end of the day, I feel like this one probably goes to decision at a decent clip, and I think this could definitely end up being a split decision some of the time as well. So in that case, I would rather be holding the plus 220 ticket on Javier Garcia. I just think that the line's a little wide here, and I'm not super impressed with Gomes, what we've been seeing from him lately. So yeah, I got to lean to the underdog in this one. I think that plus 220 is a much better value than minus 280 on Leandro Gomes. And we're headed to the flyweight division next. We have a fight between Cody Davis and Mark Climaco. Davis, 7-0 amateur run, now 5-0 as a pro. So this guy's killing it right now. 12 fights, 12 wins, 12-0, making second appearance on LFA here, and he's fought on a different show every single fight up until now. He fought on Combate, fought on Cage Warriors when they came to California, fought on LXF, he's fought on LFA before, and he fought pretty good competition most of the time out. Last win over Peyton Brzezinski, that's a really good win, kind of an underrated guy there. I was very impressed with that performance personally. He did get taken down a bunch early in the first round, but did well to get back up and showed some pretty solid defensive grappling there, and he actually ended that first round on the back with a pretty tight rear naked choke locked on. So he was able to dominate pretty much the rest of the fight after that. I was very impressed with what I saw from Cody Davis, as I said. He is a very good athlete. He's very quick. His footwork is good. He's agile. He gets in and out of the pocket well. He's coming up against another strong prospect from American Kickboxing Academy in Mark Climaco. Climaco started off his amateur career 4-0, turned pro, went 6-0 to start. Got knocked out by Yuma Horiyuchi last time out. That was his first loss. He's going to be appearing on LFA for the 4th time here, and he's got good wins on his resume. Nakanaluma, Rodney Kialohi, those are good names. He's a sharp striker at distance. He's a very good wrestler as well. I think that Climaco probably has more of the finishing equity in this fight as compared to Cody Davis. I don't really see this fight finishing, though, but if we were going to see one, I feel like it probably would be on the Climaco side. But the first time I watched Cody Davis fight was on that California Cage Warriors event. I liked him after that fight. I wasn't 100% sold that this guy was the real deal, but that last performance on LFA against Peyton Brzezinski, I really liked what I saw. That really sold me. I think this guy's really good. And, I think Climaco's really good too. Climaco is another guy that I have been high on in the past, but in this one, I got to go with Cody Davis to get the job done. We're going to be moving up to the lightweight division now. We have a bout between Jean-Paul Lebosnoyani and Caleb Hall. So Jean-Paul is making his 4th LFA appearance. He was 7-0 as an amateur, perfect run through the amateur circuit, now 4-1 as a pro, and that one loss was a knockout loss to Spike Carlisle, who was signed by the UFC, now is signed with Bellator. No shame in that one earlier in your career. Lebosnoyani has a 100% finish rate, and he is a very, very skilled jiu-jitsu player, and he has been at it pretty much since he was first born. He's been training it since I think he was like 3 or 4 years old. His dad was coached by Royce Gracie's dad, who then taught Royce Gracie himself, and that's Lebosnoyani's dad I'm talking about. Nono Lebosnoyani was Royce Gracie's coach. So very, very good credentials right there, and definitely in a very good environment to succeed in martial arts growing up was Jean-Paul. 3 of his 4 wins have come by submission. and he looks very promising so far. I really like what I've seen from him. He is the LXF lightweight champ. Looks like just, kind of what you would expect, a really, really excellent grappler. He's coming up against Caleb Paul here, and this is a different Caleb Paul than you might be thinking of. There is another Caleb Paul that we've seen on LFA before. This is not the 2-4 Caleb Paul that we've seen compete on LFA and on CFFC. This is an undefeated New England prospect fighting out of Portland, Maine. Different Caleb Paul. This is the 4-0 one, so he has 100% finish rate, all of them coming in the first round on NEF, so he's 4-0 there. He was 8-4 as an amateur before turning pro, and the level of competition that he's fought hasn't been very high. He hasn't really tested himself too much. He did fight against the regional legend Jay Ellis, who was 15-86 at the time, and he is now 16-105. So do with that information what you will. I believe that Caleb Paul is training at Syndicate in Las Vegas, so training at a very good camp, good coaches, good training partners. Looks to be a very strong guy. I think his wrestling looks good, his grappling looks good. I want to see what these guys look like at the weigh-ins, because I think that Hall could have a bit of a size advantage. I think he's about 6 feet, and obviously Jean-Paul is a little bit on the shorter side. So I'm going to still go with Jean-Paul here, but I think this fight could potentially play out closer than the line indicates. But this is a fight where I think we're going to see a lot of grappling, and if we're going to see a lot of grappling, I want to be on Jean-Paul Lebosnoyani in this one, because I think his jiu-jitsu credentials kind of speak for themselves. Definitely what we've seen on tape, he looks very, very good in those exchanges. So in a grapple-heavy matchup, I'm going to go with the guy that I believe is the better grappler, and that is Jean-Paul. Next up, we got a catchweight bout, 160 pounds, between Jacob Rosales and Darren Smith Jr. So Rosales is a 2-time Dana White's Contender Series alum. He's fought pretty much everywhere, you name it. LFA, RFA, before LFA was even a thing. Dana White's Contender Series, Bellator. He's a 13-7 pro fighter at 27 years old, so he has a lot of experience. 20 pro fights. His last 5 has been a little bit rocky. He is 2-3 over those last 5 fights, but he's been facing a high level of competition. He lost to Jonathan Pierce, who is now a UFC fighter and finding a lot of success in the UFC, I might add. That was on Contender Series. He lost on LFA to Bryce Logan, who is now on Bellator, and he lost his most recent bout on Dana White's Contender Series. That was the second time on the show, and that was a loss to Victor Martinez. And he broke his arm in that one. I think that maybe if they ran that one back and both limbs were working, Rosales would have fared a little bit better, but at the end of the day, it's all experience that he has under his belt now, and he's coming up against Darren Smith Jr. in this one. So if you think that Rosales had a lot of experience, this guy Darren Smith Jr., man, 21-12 record, 33 pro fights, and he's actually fought somewhat decent strength of schedule compared to what you might think when you see, a 35-year-old guy in the regional scene with a bunch of fights. You think it's a bunch of random guys. No, he was on Bellator. He fought on ACB over in Russia for a while. He actually submitted Arut Pagosian on CXF. That's pretty impressive. Knocked out Joshua Jones. I mean, his resume is pretty decent. In his last 3, he is 1-2, but those losses came to Roosevelt Roberts in the UFC now. Chris Curtis, he's in the UFC now. So there's really not too much shame in those losses. And I mean, he won his last fight, so he is coming in with some good momentum here, but 35 years old, half of his losses have come inside the distance. I think that this line, is a little bit wide, sorry. Am I lining up to lay minus 500 on Rosales? Not really, but I still think that I got to go with Rosales in this one. I feel like these guys are kind of at different stages of their career. 35 years old for Darren Smith Jr., kind of coming towards the end, whereas Rosales is 27. He's got a ton of experience. He's been so close to breaking into the big show. I think he's still hungry for it. I think he still kind of has more in the gas tank at this point. So I'm going to pick Jacob Rosales to get the win in this featured bout. Now we got a banger of a fight for the co-main event between Ricardo Diaz and John Sweeney at bantamweight. Ricardo Diaz is a Kings MMA representative. He has a 10-5 record, which doesn't look the most impressive on paper, but Diaz is a little better than that record might indicate. He's going to be on LFA here for the 4th time. He is 2-1 on the show in the 3 fights that he has already competed in, and he debuted against Desmond Torres. He won a decision there, then had a tremendous flying knee KO over George Garcia in the next one. That was probably one of the best knockouts of that year, I would say. He lost a decision last time out to UFC veteran Michinori Tanaka, and once again, I am going to have to correct the Tapology height listing here. He is 5'7", not 5'8". He has a very aggressive fighting style. He throws to hurt guys. He mixes in the high kicks well, has some power in his hands too, and he showed that in his last fight against Tanaka in the first round where he was able to get a knockdown, and that was a fight where for the majority of the time, he was getting controlled, but he did have, some big moments in the grappling, and I feel like the fact that he got controlled so much was more a function of the type of grappler that he was in there with. I mean, Tanaka is certainly no joke. There's a lot of other guys in the regional scene that I think he would do a lot worse than he did Ricardo Diaz, so yeah, I don't read too much into that, and like I said, Diaz still was able to have some moments there. He was able to roll into mount in the second round. He's a competent grappler, and I think that if you just watch that fight, you might not get that, but he is a good grappler. He has a lot of submissions on his record, and he's a good finisher. When he smells blood in the water, he looks to capitalize, and that's something I really like about his game. So he's going to be coming up against John Sweeney here, who is 10-3. He's going to be a few years younger as well, and is going to also have a nice reach advantage, about 3 inches of reach. Started his pro career actually on LFA in 2017. He fought twice and got round 1 submissions in both of those fights, then went over to NFC, knocked out Devontae Sewell. So his career was off to a flying start. He fought a number of times on NFC actually, and his most recent loss came over there to Cody Darren, who is obviously in the UFC now. And Sweeney has won 4 straight fights since then. 2 of those wins coming on XMMA, one of them coming on Combate. And he won a split decision over Cole Smith in his last fight. That was a close fight. Sweeney kind of has that karate style fighting. He's a good boxer as well. Very good hand speed. He's got combinations that can knock guys out. He's got fast hands. Length advantage, I think, is going to suit kind of his fighting style here. And he's also shown some decent takedown defense. Nothing amazing, but, this isn't a guy that you can just take down at will. At least it doesn't look like that from the tape. But still, I kind of prefer the Ricardo Diaz side at plus 165 here. I think he's the better grappler. I think that he's a pretty durable guy, and I think he's a powerful guy as well. And I will admit, I think Sweeney at distance probably has the advantage. I think in terms of volume, he's probably the better volume striker. But I just don't think that he's got a big enough edge in this fight for me to want to play him at the current price. At the number, I like Ricardo Diaz as the underdog in this one. I think he's a dangerous guy, and I think he's definitely a live dog here. So, I'm going to side with Ricardo Diaz in the co-main. That's going to bring us up to the main event of this fight card. A very good fight between Chase Gibson and Hyder Amil at 145 pounds. Chase Gibson is making his 3rd appearance on LFA here. He is 2-0 so far. He's done very well. He finished undefeated prospect Ty Clark in the 2nd round and also won a decision over Javier Garcia. Those are 2 good wins. In his last 3 fights, he is 2-1, and the 1 loss was to Tucker Lutz. That came on Dana White's Contender Series. Gibson's going to be the much more experienced guy in this fight, right? He's got 16 pro fights. Hyder Amil only has 6. I think Gibson is also going to be the bigger guy here. He's listed at 5'8" on Tapology, but he's actually 5'10". He's got a 72-inch reach as well, which is nice. He's going to have some decent length and I think 1 inch of height here. He's got good wrestling, pretty good grappling too. His body triangle is very strong. When he gets that locked in, it is very hard to escape. Puts a lot of pressure on you from those back positions. Physically, he's just a strong guy. He's got a big frame for featherweight. His striking, I think, is kind of average. Definitely don't think he's winning 15 minutes of striking with Amil, but I think that he probably knows that. I don't think he's going to try to do that. I think he's going to try to mix in the wrestling, try to mix in the grappling, and I think that's definitely in his best interest in this fight. He does have pretty good length for this division, though, which kind of can make the stand-up a little bit closer than what it maybe actually is. Hyder Amil has a 6-0 pro record, great record, but significantly less experience in the cage than Chase Gibson has, and I think that Chase Gibson has also fought the better guys in the cage when he's been in there so far. And I'm also going to have to correct the Tapology measurements here for Hyder Amil. He is listed at 5'9" by LFA, so normally I believe the LFA measurements over Tapology, so I think that both guys are taller than what they're listed as on here. They do have the reach correct, though, at 69.5 inches. Amil may be a little bit smaller than Gibson, but he is in very good shape. He's very muscular. I think he'll look like the more kind of defined, more built guy when he's in there. But he's only had 6 fights, and 3 of those came on the Bellator prelims. He had 2 wins inside the distance and 1 split decision. Also, he's making his 3rd LFA appearance here. He's fought 2 times already. He finished Hobson Jr. in the 2nd round and then won a split decision over Devontae Sewell in April. And he had a really strong start to that match with Sewell. He really dominated the 1st round, almost finished him probably in the 1st round there, and then looked really good to start the 2nd. But Sewell was landing some elbows. He was cutting him open. Amil was still landing damage, but he started to look a little tired, started to look a little bit labored in his movements. His body language didn't look the greatest at certain points in that fight. He looked a little bit tired. He got a takedown towards the end, and Sewell did kind of have some kind of guillotine attempt. It wasn't really that close, but it was something. You can kind of see how a judge would give that round to Sewell. Overall, Amil won a split decision. I felt he deserved the decision, but pretty competitive rounds, round 2 and 3. And also, just as a little side note, this fight card is taking place in California, so if Gilbert Melendez is commentating, you're going to hear some pretty biased commentary for the Amil side. But I got to go with Chase Gibson in this one. I mean, if you've been backing Chase Gibson as an underdog lately, you've been doing pretty well for yourself. He's been the dog in all 3 of his last 3 fights, and if you bet 100 on him at his average closing line in each of those fights, you will be up $125 profit, and I think I got to side with the underdog in this one too, man. I just feel like Chase Gibson is a really solid guy. He's been around. He's fought good competition. He's got a lot of experience. And this is kind of a show me spot for Hyder Amil. You know, show me that you deserve to be the favorite, and a decent sized favorite. You know, moderate favorite against Chase Gibson here. And if he does that, you know, I'll believe it. But until then, I think I got to kind of side with Chase Gibson at this price until proven otherwise. So that's going to do it for my LFA 137 predictions, guys. This should be a really fun fight card. I'm really looking forward to watching this one. As always, I will catch you in the next video. Best of luck on Friday. Best of luck on Saturday, too. And yeah, I'll catch you guys on the next one.